Welcome back, guys. I wanted to go over my third type of book review I wanted to do, and that is spirituality books. Spirituality isn't something that I discuss much on my channel, and I'm not sure how much I plan to. I feel like spirituality is a very personal journey and individual, and so there's not always a lot someone else can tell you about what you should be doing. So, that said, I have been reading some books that I want to share with you, and I'm just going to review two for you today. And I have others that, I'll review soon once I finish them. I'll start with the one I'm currently reading. I haven't quite finished it yet, but I've read enough of it now that I think I can safely review it for you. This is a book on meditation. It's called Listening Below the Noise by Anne D. LeClaire. And it is subtitled A Meditation on the Practice of Silence. If you know me in real life, you'll know why this called to me. If you've seen the length of some of my videos, you will know why this called to me. Sometimes I speak way too much. And if my mom is watching this, I know you're laughing because it's true. I always have. And I know, I know that there's something I should do about it. I will say that as I get deeper into my own sense of self and spirituality, that it's getting better. I would say a little at a time. I'm realizing some things just don't need to be said. And I think you become slightly more reflective as well. And so you find yourself saying a few less things outwardly as you do ruminating on them internally. So, this book starts off with she's comparing it to The Secret Garden, the book about, I think it's Mary Lennox, and how Mary finds this secret garden, and at first she's like amazed by it, and then she finds some weeding that needs doing and things like that, and nobody knows it's there, but she can always come to it whenever she wants that solitude. So that's related in the sense that the author, Anne, has decided to take on, through guidance, that she wants to basically take a vow of silence, so to speak, for the first, I think it's the first and third Monday of every month. And at first, she finds this wonderful place of solitude, and the first day was great, a little weird, but she really liked the peace and quiet of it all, and that was finding the garden and the initial enthrallment. And then, by her third time, she came upon the weeds of it and realizing what silence really meant. And by that, she's referring to how a lot of the times we use television and incessant talking and iPod and radio and podcast, just everything you can think of that is noise. Those things sort of end up quieting our spirit in the sense that we can't really listen and deal with the problems going on inside. And I would say that this is true. There are times when I myself have avoided altogether silence, especially when going to bed, because the directions your thoughts kind of take make you sort of uncomfortable sometimes. And it's hard for us to choose to deal with things that cause us pain, whether that be unresolved childhood things or current issues that you need to make right but haven't, problems within ourselves that need resolution, like spending too much money or drowning out emotions with shopping or eating or things like that. Those are the thickets and the thorns and the weeds of the secret garden. And by her third time, she was really fighting doing her committed meditation of silence because she didn't want to deal with those things that were coming up for her once she stopped drowning out the noise of her soul. And that's basically where I'm at now. She's discussed a lot of issues that it has caused her with other people, with her husband, who, you know, had come to realize that at first he really was unsupportive. He didn't care for her when she did this. He found it, um, what's the word? Inconvenient. And then eventually he said, well, you know, I kind of learned, you know, I'd get frustrated from taking, you know, when I'd have to, the calls from the bank and the insurance company and the kids, and have to tell them I don't have a message for you right now, I can't answer you. It was really, you know, a pain in the butt. And he says, and then I realized how much I felt like those things were important, and they actually aren't that urgent. The book talks a lot about the urgency that society placed on us, and the guilt should you take a day of silence for yourself. People are thinking it's rude or it's not socially proper, you know. There's that guilt that society places on you for doing anything for yourself, and it goes into that quite a bit. It's a simple book. It is simple, but it's really helpful. Um, it really makes you feel quiet just reading it, you know. And I don't know that I can take days of silence with a toddler. I think she's expecting me to converse with her. But I can take from this practice some things of my own, in that I can learn to be quiet in certain situations. I personally can think of several ways in which I speak to cover up what I'm feeling or an uncomfortable situation. You know how people can talk to fill in awkward silence, that sort of thing. And I can relate to that, and that is something that this book is helping me learn to work on. Maybe I'll update my review about that in a few weeks and let you know how that practice goes. My last review for you right now. This is by Dr. Michael Newton, and it's called Journey of Souls, Case Studies of Life Between Lives. I am not drawn to say a lot about this book to you right now. That may be hang-ups of my own, or because I shouldn't. I don't know. The standpoint of this book is on the life of spirits, your soul, and how we imagine the soul is that you have the body, the physical body, the mind that has the emotions and senses and basic intellect, and then the spirit that has the conscience, the further logic, reasoning, and higher intelligence. And how the physical body will always die, and that the soul energy never will. Basically, this is a counseling psychologist, master hypnotherapist, and teacher for more than 30 years. He is the founder of the Michael Newton Institute for Life Between Lives hypnotherapy. He's well known, I think. I had seen a recommendation for this book many, many times before I finally ordered it for myself from the library. I'm really hesitant about talking about this book, and I knew I would be ever since I knew I would do a review. I feel like from some things that he said, my perspective is that if you are not meant to know these things in your life right now, you either won't see this video, you won't pay attention to this video, or you just won't be drawn to pick this up. if you do pick this up and maybe it's not for you right now, you won't understand things in it. Not really. And if it is right for you right now, that you will pick it up, the ideas will flow for you, and it will be easy for you to take and leave the things that make sense to you. The perspective of this book is, for lack of a better term, reincarnation. Basically, the soul living on and learning its lessons to become nearer and nearer to source and things like that. I knew I would struggle with this review, and I apologize for my faltering. But basically, I guess, throughout it, you can see he goes through case studies. And there are, I believe, 29 case studies in this book. And he does say that none of them really contradict each other. None of them know each other, of course. There's therapist-client privilege there. This does have a flow, unlike the yogi book I mentioned in a previous review. And it starts with death and departure from our physical bodies. And it goes to re-entering the spirit world and, things like what happens there, all the way through rebirth. And he puts each patient who was seeking some form of past life regression for other reasons, like pain, chronic pain, things like that he's been able to help with, into I think he calls it a super conscious state, something like that, more than just into their subconscious mind, their super conscious mind, which is a bit deeper. And he is able to communicate not only past life regression, but also what happens between those lives. And that is where the journey of souls comes in. I understand not everyone is going to be drawn to this kind of book, but I think it is a very interesting read all the same. The case studies are very interesting in how they use not always the same terminology for the same thing, but terms that mean the same thing. And a lot of what hypnotherapy means is you relate to what you see with what you're able to comprehend with your own mind. So it's going to be somewhat individual, thus people are going to use different words for the same thing, but words that all mean similar things. And sometimes there are even words that aren't things we would necessarily use. It almost seemed spiritual. I don't want to say a whole lot more about this book. I recommend reading it if you're feeling open and if you're feeling drawn to. There were 2 times specifically that there was a certain paragraph that I was reading that I was not able to comprehend what seemed to be simple words. 2 paragraphs specifically. Once I asked my husband, "What does this mean to you?" And once I didn't ask, but I just reread it a few times, and at no point was it was almost like the words were like a foreign language to me. His theory in this book is that we all have spiritual guides. These guides meet us when we pass away physically and help us to readjust back into the spiritual world where we remember everything from all lives, things like that. And those spirit guides are there for us on this life as well, each physical life, that they're with us always. And his idea, even when working with clients, is that he would sometimes find that a client was blocked from speaking on a certain subject. And he feels like these are spirit guide blocks, that they don't allow you to understand something, that it's not right for you right then, that you're not ready to understand that yet. And there were 2 paragraphs that were all very simple words, and it didn't click in. I couldn't make sense of it. But the rest of the book totally did. 2 small paragraphs, and I found that interesting. I don't know, maybe there was something I'm not supposed to know yet or to understand. But I have on order his second book, which is called Destiny of Souls, which is slightly more in depth from how I took it, questions that he received after writing this book for more information. And that was an additional 75 case studies or 70 case studies. So I look forward to that one coming in. And he has a third book as well on similar things. He recently passed away, I think, in 2016. It is an interesting perspective, especially if you've been of one religious mind your whole life. I think it can be good to allow yourself to be acquainted with other ideas out in the world, and that's part of coexisting with people, is that it's good to be more aware of more perspectives than just your own. I will say, if this doesn't resonate with you at all, don't bother. It's not going to make a difference to your life. Well, I won't say that, because it did make a difference to my life today, but your life will continue as it is meant to if you're open and you try and live in a conscious moral way. You will be able to continue down a good path for yourself. But that said, if this does at all resonate with you and it sounds interesting, or maybe you'd heard of it before like I had, maybe a few times, then go buy it or go rent it. It's probably available at most libraries because it's a pretty popular book. Do it. I read this in about a day and a half. I might have to purchase this one for myself to keep, because it was, for me, enlightening in a lot of ways. And interesting. I found the case study parts really fascinating, where in hypnotism they were speaking to the therapist, Dr. Newton. Interesting. So that's my last review. That's probably more than I even wanted to say about that one, but it's not for me to decide how anyone should take that book. That is very individual. Some people are going to read it and chuck it and say, this is all hogwash. And some people are going to say, that explains it. Yeah, so I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks for watching.